Last night's explosive confrontation between Leonardo DiCaprio and Jimmy Kimmel sent shockwaves through Hollywood as environmental accusations turned personal, leading to the most dramatic talk show exit in recent memory. The studio lights dimmed as the familiar opening music of Leonardo DiCaprio's talk show filled the air. What started as another routine celebrity interview would spiral into one of the most controversial moments in late-night television history. DiCaprio, sporting his signature smirk, adjusted his tie as he prepared to introduce his guest for the evening. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the host of Jimmy Kimmel Live, Jimmy Kimmel," DiCaprio announced with theatrical enthusiasm, though those familiar with his recent interviews could detect an underlying edge in his voice. Kimmel walked onto the set with his characteristic easygoing demeanor, waving to the audience before settling into the guest chair. The two exchanged pleasantries as cameras rolled, but veteran viewers of DiCaprio's show knew that beneath the Hollywood veneer, tensions often simmered just below the surface. "Jimmy, great to have you here," DiCaprio began, his voice carrying that familiar tone that guests had learned to be wary of. "I have to say, I've been watching your show for years, and I'm curious about something." Kimmel leaned back comfortably, seemingly unaware of the direction this conversation was about to take. "Shoot, Leo. What's on your mind?" DiCaprio's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, his media-trained smile becoming more calculated. "Well, you've made quite a career out of mocking people, haven't you? The man-on-the-street segments where you make regular folks look foolish, the celebrity mean tweets. It's interesting entertainment choices for someone who claims to care about social issues." The audience fell silent, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere. Kimmel's relaxed posture stiffened slightly, but he maintained his composure with practiced ease. "I think comedy has always been about finding humor in everyday situations, Leo. We're not trying to hurt anyone," Kimmel responded diplomatically, though his media instincts were clearly kicking in. DiCaprio leaned forward, his voice taking on that prosecutorial tone that had become his trademark in recent interviews. "But isn't there something inherently privileged about a millionaire celebrity making fun of working-class Americans who can't afford the kind of lifestyle you and I enjoy? Especially when you then turn around and lecture people about political issues?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Kimmel's famous quick wit seemed momentarily stunned by the unexpected attack. This wasn't the light-hearted celebrity banter that audiences expected from these types of appearances. "I'm not sure where this is coming from, Leo," Kimmel said, his voice remaining steady but his body language betraying his growing discomfort. "We've always tried to keep things fun and light-hearted. Nobody's forcing people to participate in our segments." DiCaprio's laugh had a cold edge to it. "Fun and light-hearted? Tell that to the people whose embarrassing moments you've broadcast to millions. But I suppose when you're living in a Hermosa Beach mansion, it's easy to laugh at other people's expense." The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was clearly not going according to anyone's script, and the tension between the two men was becoming increasingly palpable. Kimmel's famous composure began to crack slightly. "Look, Leo, I'm not sure what's gotten into you tonight, but this feels unnecessarily hostile. We've known each other for years. What's really going on here?" DiCaprio's eyes gleamed with something that looked almost predatory. "What's going on is that I think it's time someone called out the hypocrisy in this industry. You make your living exploiting people for laughs, then you put on this concerned citizen act when it comes to politics. Don't you think that's a little disingenuous?" The studio had become eerily quiet except for the hum of cameras and equipment. Even the production crew seemed frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let this train wreck continue to unfold on live television. Kimmel's jaw tightened visibly. "Exploiting people? Leo, with all due respect, this is coming from someone who's made a career out of playing pretend while lecturing the world about climate change from his private jet. If we're talking about hypocrisy," the words struck like lightning. DiCaprio's carefully constructed host persona cracked completely, revealing something much darker underneath. His voice dropped to a dangerously quiet level that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. "Excuse me?" The two words carried such venom that several audience members visibly recoiled. Kimmel realized he had crossed a line, but there was no taking back what he'd said. The die was cast, and both men knew this conversation was about to explode beyond all professional boundaries. DiCaprio stood up slowly from his host chair, towering over his guest with an intimidating presence that seemed to fill the entire studio. "Did you just accuse me of being a hypocrite about environmental issues? Me? The person who's donated more money to climate causes than you'll make in your entire career?" Kimmel remained seated, but his posture straightened defiantly. "Leo, I didn't mean to—" "No, no, no," DiCaprio interrupted, his voice rising with each word. "You absolutely meant it. You sat in my chair, on my show, and decided to take a shot at my environmental activism. That's rich, coming from someone whose biggest contribution to society is making people laugh at others' misfortune." The studio audience was now completely silent, witnessing what felt less like entertainment and more like a public execution. Camera operators continued filming, unsure whether they should stop rolling or capture every moment of this unprecedented meltdown. Kimmel finally stood up, matching DiCaprio's aggressive energy. "You want to talk about contributions to society? At least I don't spend my time attacking other people under the guise of honest conversation. What you're doing right now isn't journalism, Leo. It's just mean-spirited bullying." DiCaprio's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Bullying? I'm asking legitimate questions about your character and your work. If you can't handle basic scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't be in this business. Or maybe you're just used to softball interviews where everyone kisses your ass." "This isn't scrutiny," Kimmel shot back, his own famous temper finally flaring. "This is you being a complete asshole for no apparent reason. I came here as a colleague, as a friend, and you've spent the last 10 minutes trying to tear me down. What the hell is wrong with you?" The profanity hung in the air like a bomb explosion. Everyone in the studio knew this moment would be replayed endlessly on social media, dissected by every entertainment blogger and late-night comedy show in the country. DiCaprio's eyes flashed with something approaching rage. "What's wrong with me? What's wrong is that I'm tired of the fake Hollywood niceness. I'm tired of pretending that people like you are actually making the world a better place when all you do is profit off of other people's humiliation." "Other people's humiliation?" Kimmel's voice cracked with disbelief. "Leo, you're literally humiliating me on national television right now. You're doing exactly what you're accusing me of, except you're being cruel about it." DiCaprio stepped closer to Kimmel, invading his personal space in a way that made everyone in the studio uncomfortable. "The difference is that you deserve it. You've built your entire career on punching down at people who can't fight back. I'm punching up at someone who has a platform to defend himself." Kimmel backed away slightly, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "This is insane. You've completely lost your mind. I don't know what's happened to you, but this isn't the Leo I've known for years." "Maybe you never really knew me at all," DiCaprio replied coldly. "Maybe what you knew was just another Hollywood performance. But this is real, Jimmy. This is me telling you exactly what I think about your so-called comedy career." The confrontation had reached a boiling point. Kimmel looked around the studio, seeing shocked faces of crew members and audience members who had come expecting light entertainment, and instead witnessed character assassination. His hands were shaking slightly with a combination of anger and adrenaline. "You know what, Leo? You're right about one thing. I don't know who you are anymore, because the person I thought I knew wouldn't ambush a guest like this. The person I thought I knew had basic human decency." DiCaprio's smile returned, but it was cold and predatory. "Human decency? That's interesting coming from someone who's made millions laughing at people's pain and embarrassment. Tell me, Jimmy, how does it feel to be on the receiving end for once?" That question broke something inside Kimmel. His face went from flushed red to pale white in seconds, and when he spoke, his voice carried a fury that matched DiCaprio's cruelty. "You want to know how it feels? It feels like being attacked by someone who's clearly having some kind of breakdown on live television. It feels like watching someone I respected turn into a complete monster for ratings." DiCaprio clapped slowly, mockingly. "There it is, the real Jimmy Kimmel. Not the lovable goofball act you put on for the cameras. You're just as nasty as everyone else in this town when someone calls you out on your bullshit." "My bullshit?" Kimmel's voice cracked with incredulous rage. "Leo, you've spent the last 15 minutes trying to destroy me for no reason. You invited me here under false pretenses just to humiliate me. And you're talking about my character?" The studio audience had gone beyond uncomfortable silence into what felt like collective trauma. Several people had gotten up to leave, unable to watch this public destruction any longer. The camera operators kept filming, capturing every moment of what would undoubtedly become one of the most infamous talk show moments in television history. DiCaprio began pacing back and forth like a caged predator, his energy manic and unsettling. "False pretenses? I told you exactly what this was going to be. I said I wanted to have an honest conversation. The problem is that you can't handle honesty. You're so used to your safe little bubble where everyone laughs at your jokes and tells you how wonderful you are." "Honest conversation?" Kimmel's voice rose to nearly a shout. "This isn't honest, Leo. This is sadistic. You're getting off on this. Look at yourself. You're enjoying watching me suffer." DiCaprio stopped pacing and turned to face Kimmel directly, his eyes gleaming with something that looked genuinely unhinged. "You're damn right I'm enjoying it. Do you know how long I've wanted to tell you exactly what I think about your pathetic excuse for comedy? Years, Jimmy. Years of watching you mock people who can't fight back while pretending to be some kind of social justice warrior." Kimmel took a step toward DiCaprio, his own composure completely shattered. "You think I can't fight back? You think I'm just going to stand here and let you tear me apart? You've made a huge mistake, Leo. Because unlike the people in your little segments, I have a voice, and I'm going to use it." "Go ahead," DiCaprio taunted, spreading his arms wide in a gesture of mock invitation. "Use your voice. Tell everyone how the mean man was cruel to poor little Jimmy Kimmel. Cry about it. Maybe that'll get you some sympathy ratings." The cruelty in DiCaprio's voice was so raw, so personal, that it felt like watching someone commit emotional murder on live television. Several crew members were now whispering frantically to each other, clearly debating whether to cut the cameras. Kimmel's hands were clenched into fists at his sides, his whole body shaking with rage. "You know what your problem is, Leo? You've become everything you claim to hate. You're a bully. You're cruel. And you're using your platform to hurt people just like you're accusing me of doing." "The difference," DiCaprio snarled, "is that I'm punching up at someone who deserves it. You punch down at innocent people for cheap laughs. I'm giving you exactly what you've been giving others for decades." "Innocent people?" Kimmel's voice cracked with disbelief. "What did I ever do to you? What did I do to deserve this? We've been friends for years. We've had dinner together. Our families know each other. And you're treating me like I'm your worst enemy." DiCaprio's expression shifted for just a moment, something almost human flickering across his features before the cold mask returned. "Maybe friendship doesn't mean what I thought it meant. Maybe I've finally realized what kind of person you really are underneath all that fake charm." The words hit Kimmel like physical blows. He staggered backward slightly, looking around the studio as if seeing it clearly for the first time. The shocked faces of the audience, the uncomfortable crew members, the cameras capturing every moment of his humiliation. "This is sick," Kimmel whispered, his voice barely audible but somehow carrying to every corner of the silent studio. "This whole thing is sick. You're sick, Leo. Whatever's wrong with you, whatever's happened to make you this cruel, you need help." The words hung in the air like an accusation that couldn't be taken back. For the first time during the entire confrontation, DiCaprio seemed genuinely stunned. His predatory smile faltered, replaced by something that looked almost like confusion. "I need help?" DiCaprio's voice wavered slightly, the first crack in his armor of cruelty. "I'm not the one who built a career on—" "Stop," Kimmel cut him off, his voice gaining strength with each word. "Just stop. I don't know what happened to you, but this isn't about my career or your environmental work or any of the bullshit you've been spouting for the last 20 minutes. This is about you having some kind of public breakdown and trying to drag me down with you." The studio fell into an even deeper silence, if that was possible. The audience members who had remained were now witnessing something that felt more like therapy than entertainment. DiCaprio's manic energy seemed to deflate slightly, but his eyes still burned with unresolved fury. "You think this is a breakdown?" DiCaprio asked, but his voice lacked the venom it had carried moments before. "This is clarity, Jimmy. This is me finally saying what needs to be said about the hypocrisy in this industry." Kimmel shook his head, slowly, looking at DiCaprio with something that might have been pity. "No, Leo. This is you destroying your reputation and your friendships because you can't handle whatever's really eating at you, and you're doing it in the most public, humiliating way possible." DiCaprio's face contorted with rage again. But there was something desperate about it now, like a wounded animal lashing out. "Don't you dare psychoanalyze me. You don't know anything about what I'm dealing with." "Then tell me," Kimmel shouted back, his own desperation breaking through. "If something's wrong, if something's happened, then talk to me like a human being instead of trying to destroy me on television. We used to be friends, Leo. What happened to that?" The question seemed to hit DiCaprio like a physical blow. He staggered backward, his face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. Rage, confusion, something that might have been grief, and finally a cold emptiness that was somehow worse than all the anger. "Friends?" DiCaprio repeated, his voice hollow. "Friends don't build careers on other people's pain. Friends don't pretend to care about social issues while profiting off cruelty. You want to know what happened to our friendship? I finally saw you for who you really are." Kimmel's shoulders sagged with exhaustion and defeat. "And what about who you really are, Leo? Because the person standing in front of me right now isn't someone I recognize. The person I considered a friend would never do this to someone he claimed to care about." DiCaprio opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. For the first time during the entire confrontation, he seemed truly at a loss. The silence stretched on, becoming unbearable. Finally, Kimmel straightened his jacket and looked directly into the nearest camera. "To everyone watching this at home, I want you to know that this isn't normal. This isn't what professional discourse looks like. This isn't what friendship looks like. This is what happens when someone loses their way and decides to take everyone else down with them." He turned back to DiCaprio one last time. "I hope you get the help you need, Leo. I really do. But I'm not going to stand here and be your punching bag anymore." DiCaprio's face flushed red with renewed anger. "You don't get to walk away from this. You don't get to play the victim after I've exposed what you really are." "Watch me," Kimmel replied quietly, and began walking toward the exit. DiCaprio lunged forward, grabbing Kimmel's arm. "We're not done here." Kimmel yanked his arm free with surprising force. "Yes, we are. We're done. Completely done." The physical contact seemed to break whatever spell had held the audience in place. Several people began talking at once. Crew members rushed forward, and the studio erupted into chaos. Through it all, Kimmel walked steadily toward the exit, his dignity intact despite everything that had happened. DiCaprio stood alone in the center of the stage, looking around at the chaos he had created. The predatory confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like bewilderment. He had gotten exactly what he wanted: a confrontation, a spectacle, a moment that would be remembered forever. But as he watched his former friend disappear through the exit doors, it was clear that he had also lost something irreplaceable in the process. The cameras kept rolling as DiCaprio slowly sank back into his host chair, the studio around him in complete disarray. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of the exit doors closing behind Jimmy Kimmel, with a final definitive click.